So to start, Rich, for the scene in which Sarah Silverman's Penelope meets the Disney princesses, you got together an incredible cast from the past movies, Belle from Beauty and the Beast, Jasmine from Aladdin. Tell us a little bit about putting that scene together.
The scene started out simple enough. It was just kind of a joke of well, what is something that Ralph and Penelope could do that's funny in the internet?
Ralph, what is it you're trying to say?
We're going to the internet.
What?
And someone said, well, what about those Quizlets? Are you an Elsa or an Anna? Take the quiz to find out. And we thought, oh, that's kind of funny, but there's just no way that we could ever make that work, and we would go home and think about it and say that's a pretty good idea, so what if it wasn't just Elsa and Anna, but it was all the Disney princesses, and we actually did take them to that website, ohmydisney.com, which is a big Disney fan site. And what if they met like a bunch of those characters and Penelope actually interacted with the Disney princesses, never thinking that it's going to involve bringing in all the voice actors, building the 2D princesses in 3D for the first time. It was an amazing experience. I mean, to meet all those actresses, and we scheduled times after they recorded that they met with our animation staff just to kind of give their insights to their characters. That's one of my favorite memories of making this movie, is like watching each of those actresses talk with the animators and realizing how much of those characters are really from their personalities.
Could you give us an example from one of them?
To me, Irene is Pocahontas. It's like she really is that character. She has a stoicism to her, but she's very funny, and just to see just even how they move, it's like I have like a new appreciation for that kind of 90s second golden age, it's animation staff, that they were able to like just soak up so much about each of those actresses and infuse it into those characters, that what I thought was going to be kind of a funny experience making that scene actually turned out to be like, wow, I'm really moved.
You mentioned bringing the 2D characters into 3D. I know there was a little bit of controversy about Princess Tiana.
Right.
And you worked with Anika Nani Rose. Could you describe
And we wanted to ensure that each of the princesses was true to the design of their 2D counterparts, building them in 3D, to the point that if we hear a note from the outside, we're going to address that. We're going to go back and look at that. And that's what we did with Tiana.
Were there any that you had not met before?
Of the actresses? Oh, most of them.
Most of them, okay.
Most of them. Like Jodie Benson's amazing as Ariel, is just one of the nicest people. She does tons of voiceover and great singer. And just so positive, and each one of them was just a joy.
Were they surprised to hear that they were being called into the record?
Well, that was the thing, is that I thought, are any of these people going to say like, hey, I don't like how you're, depicting us in this? But they were all so game to do it. And so many of them would say, she wouldn't say it exactly like this. She would say it a little bit different. So sometimes they would put lines into kind of the voices of the characters in a way that we didn't know, that only that they would know.
So Latifa, what convinced you and the team that Benedict Cumberbatch was your Grinch?
Oh, it was so easy. He seemed like perfect casting to us. And originally we weren't sure if he was going to use his British, his regular voice.
Today we will do mean things, and we will do them in style.
It was easy, and it sort of worked out perfectly. He's so well cast in that role.
Boris Karloff, though, who did the Grinch in the animated TV series from 1966, did have a bit of a British accent. So was there discussion about how he should sound?
No, actually, we found the character with Benedict, and that's what he felt comfortable with. And it was a challenge for him in a way that made the experience more worthwhile for him. So it worked for both of us.
What was it like to work with him?
It was great. He's so funny and charming, and he's 10 steps ahead of everything that we ask him to do. I thought he was lovely and hilarious.
Did he go to his mind palace?
He didn't really need to, He was so natural, but it was really a pleasure.
Obviously, we all remember the 1966 classic. It's played every year still on television. So, what were the things you discussed with him about what did you want to pay homage to? What did you want to do fresh?
We stayed very true to the Seuss classic and the meaning, the message behind it. What we really did was elaborate on the characters and got a better understanding of the Grinch, why he is the way he is.
You're a mean one, mister.
It wasn't so much about consumerism as it was in Seuss's version, although that's a little piece of it, but it was more about an emotional experience that he had that shaped his way of seeing the world and seeing the Who's. So, and Benedict, was very behind it. The message was sort of, if you hold on to negativity and let it shape you, it can just skew your perception of yourself and your community. So, there's so many beautiful messages in this movie, and everyone that was involved was really, really behind it. We sort of stayed away from cynicism, and we really leaned into kindness. And I think everybody felt like that's kind of timely right now, which is, what we need. So everyone was totally behind it.
And your movie. How did you find Miles Morales?
We took inspiration, of course, from the Brian Bendis and Sarah Pichelli comics that sort of introduced Miles to the world. But beyond that, it was sort of a process of saying, Miles was introduced in 2011, this is 2018. What is it that's going to make him speak to kids and audiences in general right now? Because comic book fans know Miles really well. He's beloved by virtually all the comic fans who saw him sort of come up alongside Peter Parker as a new Spider-Man. But the movie-going audience at large really doesn't know that much about him, doesn't know that much about this whole idea of Spider-Verse. So we wanted to really make people fall in love with him and really make people sort of see that it doesn't matter who's behind the mask. That's kind of our tagline for the movie, just to do a little promotion there. But that the real essence of the character of Spider-Man and what's made him so enduring is that it's about your own character as a person. It's not the powers. It's not the incredible feats that you can do. It really is what you choose to do with those powers and how your outlook on the world shapes the actions that you take. So our picture of Miles and what we wanted to kind of hone in on was, what does it feel like to be that kid living now in a city like New York, to be undergoing challenges that any kid that age goes through, and then you have this whole other thing dropped in your lap.
I don't know if this is true, maybe you can confirm, but I read somewhere that the 2011 comic the character was in part inspired by Barack Obama.
I think I've heard that about factoring into Bendis' thinking. I know at the time, of course, they were looking for ways to sort of revisit and freshen up a lot of classic characters. And I can only imagine that, the impact that Obama had on really energizing the dreams and the aspirations of everybody, but of course, in particular, people of color, kind of seeing that kind of representation, making such a huge impact all over the world, it sort of turned into, well, how can we bring that to some of these icons that we're so familiar with, and will they stand that test? It was really important to find an actor who could embody kind of the vulnerability, the wittiness, the charm that we wanted in Miles, because it all goes into that package of introducing a new version of a beloved character to the world. So you want them to be able to embrace him on his own terms, while at the same time feeling that, yeah, he's worthy to step into this role, which is kind of what our movie's all about. When we heard Shameik Moore's voice, he's like a big kid in a lot of ways. He's so charming. He's got this innocence. He's like a 2018 kid, he's a rapper. He's doing all kinds of show busy stuff, but he's just got this core of sweetness that was kind of perfect for Miles. We'd listened to his voice, and it's kind of unusual for an animated performance. I mean, a lot of people probably would not have chosen him because it's this really unique quality that he has. But we felt with the vulnerability and the directness of that coming through, that putting that up against our animation was going to result in a really unique and pretty memorable performance. And we think it has. knocking on wood, I'm hoping the audience feels that, but we really fell in love with him as soon as we saw his voice to picture.
All three of your movies are so entertaining, and you also have a message, though you don't beat the audience over the head with it. You both talked about your messages. Do you want to touch on the message of your sequel?
The theme of the movie is about change and how change relates specifically to friendships. And I would say that the message that I come out of it with is that best friends do not have to share the same dream, that it is possible to be best friends with someone and have different goals from one another. And those goals can take you, to very different places in the world, but that doesn't mean that you can't remain best friends. And using the internet as kind of a tool that allows us we use the internet as an actual place that our characters go to, and they're able to use the internet to communicate with each other. And I think it's a good contemporary message for people, realizing we have this technology that can keep us connected, so our interests should not divide us, and end relationships just because we want different things in life.
Would each of you describe one supporting character from your movie and what you wanted that character to bring to the table?
Kenan Thompson as Bricklebaum, who's the happiest Who in Whoville, who just unnerves the Grinch more than anybody else because of his joy. That's the comedy in our movie, and it's cute. They end up being best friends in the end.
Did Benedict and Kenan become best friends in real life?
No.
I could see that.
Benedict's in London.
I could see,
in New York.
best friends don't need, to share the same dreams.
I'll make sure I trade their email addresses.
Please,
with one
come
of
on.
them.
They should see your movie and kind of like
I
figure
want
this out.
Kenan and Benedict to check that out because...
No, you know how it is when you record actors.
Yeah.
It's usually in isolation, and it's pretty focused scene work.
Did you record, each of you, were they primarily recorded separately, the actors in your movies, or did you do groups?
Separately for us.
Yeah, separately for the most part. We had a few instances where we really wanted to see what was going to happen if we could get people for certain scenes in the same room and have them zinging off each other. And sometimes you get amazing stuff if everybody's on the same page at the same time. The most noteworthy example of that for us was a scene between Shameik Moore as Miles and Brian Tyree Henry, who plays his dad, Jefferson, in it. It's the scene where Jefferson is dropping Miles off at school, a school that Miles doesn't particularly want to be in, and he forces Miles to tell him that he loves him.
I love you, Miles.
Yeah, I know that.
You gotta say I love you back.
Dad, are you serious?
I wanna hear it.
Look at this place.
Dad, I love you.
Dad, I love you.
That's a copy.
And that came out of interaction right there in the room with Brian and Shameik, kind of, take after take, like winding it up and winding it up and finding something really, really great and alive. So that's what you can get out of having the actors together at its best.
I would say every scene with Ralph and Vanellope, we had John C. Reilly and Sarah Silverman together to capture just what Peter's talking about, that chemistry,
Lightning in a bottle.
that electricity that only they have when they're together, and I think that's what the audience wants, is to see, or to experience these personalities kind of bombarding, each other and kind of bouncing
And
off
that's the
one
premise of the
another.
film, they're best buddies.
Yeah, so we always try to get as many of the actors together at the same time to try and capture that experience.